talking
Two people.
the entire goddamn time!
I need to get better at intros. Yeah, I don't have an intro yet. I'm very bad at this. But I do, before we get into the theory, just want to shout out, because I posted this theory in a comment on the dual process channel, because, or in one of the community posts, because, it was their video that inspired this theory, building off of their theory, really. And, I posted in a comment, and a lad 1563 said make a 3-hour video out of it so that Fat Pat can make a 9-hour reaction series. Not sorry to disappoint you, lad, but I'm afraid it will probably not be 3 hours. But I am making a video out of it. I was already planning to. And then Megan Dawn 277 and just a person 4656 asked me to post a link when the video was up. So I figured, hey, they were really nice. Might as well mention them here. Anyway, on to the theory. You know what I'm saying? On to the theory. So, this theory... So I actually have another theory in the works, which is a bit more of a chaotic, silly theory. I don't necessarily believe it, but I think it's just fun to mention, and maybe someone will believe it. Maybe it'll divide the fan base in two, which is really what I hope to do with every upload. I just rip apart the fan base, destroy peace and prosperity across the land. That's my intention with every upload, and so, I really. So as I'm working on that video, I was thinking of this, and it kind of led me to one pretty massive realization about Ultimate Custom Night. There are two speakers in Ultimate Custom Night. Sure, there's the one you should not have killed, and I guess there is technically Charlie, but at this current moment in time, she can go fuck herself, because we're not talking about Charlie. We're here to talk about the one you should not have killed and the Vengeful Spirit as two separate entities. Here are the Vengeful Spirit's lines.
We've only just begun. I will never let you leave. I will never let you rest.
This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not going to let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again. Let's see how many times you can be pulled apart. I assure you, I am very real. This time, there is more than an illusion to fear. We know who our friends are, and you are not one of them.
Okay, I know it's difficult to hear with Fredbear, I understand that. I do understand that it's difficult to hear with Fredbear. But if you go back, listen to the mediocre melodies, listen to Fredbear, you should be able to hear it. And now here's the second set of speakers.
You knew I'd get you eventually.
Is it me try, or is it you? Perhaps it's us both.
Greetings from the fire, and from the one you should not have killed.
When I'm here, you play by my rules.
I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed.
not by you, by the one you should not have killed.
And, hopefully the other, you should be able to hear the other nightmares, obviously, have the same effect, but don't have a voice in the background. And, we've always taken this as, oh, these characters are just talking about the one you should not have killed, and the vengeful spirit is the one you should not have killed. But there could be some evidence to suggest they're two separate people. For one, most importantly, the one you should not have killed created these places. These creations of theirs aren't sentient, they're just, creations at the end of the day. So anything they say would have to have been intentional by the one he should not have killed. Hence, implying the one you should not have killed is the one speaking through these animatronics in a more third-person way. And interestingly, they seem to have a very narcissistic view of themselves. Obviously, it's just the name, the one you should not have killed, because, he shouldn't have killed anyone. So the idea of, like, I am the one, it's very self-aggrandizing in a way. And then there's also, like, with Chica's voice lines that you just heard, I have seen him as very, very godlike imagery that the one you should not have killed is painting himself with. So even that would suggest, like, would he really stoop down to the level of talking directly to William? I don't necessarily think so. And then, let's go over to the vengeful spirit, who is, talking to William directly, possessing these animatronics and speaking through them, almost like another entity is coming through and, taking over the one you should not have killed creations and speaking through them. So, I would say that's a very likely answer. Honestly, it does seem like there's two speakers, and there is a precedent in this franchise for something like that with, the logbook especially. Obviously, you had Mike in the Red Pen, but then you had, like, Faded Crying Child was just directly speaking, Crying Child, who I believe is Faded, which is slightly different from the dual process theory, but effectively, I think that the details, things like knowing that Michael had the nightmares, knowing that Michael's favourite ride as a kid was the carousel, knowing his favourite toy as a kid, drawing toys from the FNAF 4 house, even saying, like, what do you see in the mirror could either be mocking Mike's death or being like, do you feel guilty about killing me? Michael draws the tombstone that has Faded, like, my name on it. And then Altered also just lines up better with Andrew from the books. Andrew is the one who can't see, who can't hear. The party was for you could then be referring to Happiest Day, or maybe even just the one you should not have killed, the vengeful, well, at the time, the vengeful spirit, but the one you should not have killed then, or the Golden Freddy missing kid, I guess you could say, would then be, like, maybe the party was for them, maybe they were killed at their birthday party, maybe it's Happiest Day. It doesn't have to refer to Crying Child, is what I'm saying. And the details, like what Faded knows, and the fact that Faded even is interacting with Michael and working together to put their name, and like, it's my name, my name, my name, my name. So I do think that Crying Child is Cassidy, but I think that's because Cassidy is the name of Faded, and Faded is Crying Child. So I agree with them that Crying Child is called Cassidy, as I said in my FNAF 4 video, but I got there by basically the completely opposite reasoning. Anyway, point is, if you look in the logbook, you'll see that Faded is direct. Faded can alter the pages and just, like, put their words directly on them, like the vengeful spirit speaking directly through the animatronics. And then Altered, who is probably the one you should not have killed, has to be more indirect, has to alter the context of the books as opposed to actually doing anything. And so the idea of them creating these animatronics that speak indirectly would line up with how, with how the Altered speaks in the books, or in the logbook. So even that would line up with the idea that, like, yeah, Ultimate Custom Night has two separate and different speakers. And why am I so sure then that the one you should not have killed is the Golden Freddy kid, and Michael is the Vengeful Spirit? Well, Michael is the Vengeful Spirit is easy. They gave a lot of evidence. You heard it in those voice lines, and I'm not going to replay them for you because I don't want to stretch out the dialogue, but, Ned Bear says, yeah, Ned Bear says this is how it feels, and well, William's already dead, so that does feel like it's referring more to the gameplay of FNAF than necessarily death. And one, admittedly, I don't think you knew I'd get you eventually is great evidence for Michael, because William didn't know Michael would get him eventually. He doesn't know Michael's getting him currently. He doesn't know Michael's going to get him in the future. William, that's the tragedy of it, right? William doesn't know that Michael is there, and I feel like that's more of just a generally threatening line. Or even if you wanted to, you could just say that's more of the one you should not have killed being self-aggrandizing, like, oh, you knew I'd get you eventually. Oh, you knew I was after you. Like, that lines up more of the one you should not have killed anyway. I don't think you need it, because as I said, Fredbear has the voice behind him as well. That's why I made sure to point it out earlier so that no one would question it here. Fredbear has the voice behind him like the mediocre melodies. Fredbear references, put back together. Michael references that when talking about Elizabeth. So it is likely that Michael is, speaking, that Michael is that person. Also, another piece of evidence is that Orville says that, as you heard earlier, I will keep you here, no matter how many times they burn us. So that would suggest that the Vengeful Spirit, which is the name of the casting call that Scott was using, so that's why I'm referring to that. The Vengeful Spirit has been burned multiple times, and to our knowledge, the only two characters who have been burned multiple times, definitely, are Michael and William. No one else appears to quite line up with that. And it's clearly not going to be William, is it? So Michael would be the only really logical person. And then the them, and this is the fun part, the they burn us, could be fun because it could be referring to the Emilys, which may be a middle name for the sake of argument, we'll call them last name. Because, then you have Charlie, Puppet, burned the place down, which would explain why Michael didn't just burn the place down, on the second day of Fazbear Fridays, or the third day if he didn't have the necessary components to burn the place down on the second day. Why did he wait so long to burn the place down? Well, maybe he didn't, and Puppet burnt it down, and Puppet was doing Happiest Day, so Puppet only burnt it down after Puppet did Happiest Day. I think would make a lot of sense. Or after Charlie did Happiest Day, and then she burnt it down. And then Henry goes and burns down 6. So I do think it makes more sense that Puppet burnt down FNAF 3, and that the they being referred to here is just the Emily. It's no matter how many times they burn us, I'm going to keep you here and torture you. So that lines up perfectly to be Michael, assuming he's the FNAF 3 Night Guard, which I feel like it's a fairly safe assumption. Everything lines up. In fact, it would kind of confirm that he's the FNAF 3 Night Guard, because the other dialogue also supports that he is Michael. So, Vengeful Spirit is Michael, and this would also explain why in the Vengeful Spirit's casting call, Scott specifically says, I want the gender to not be obvious, but then for the one he should not have killed, it's just, it's called him. Why would you want the voice gender to be ambiguous if you're just going to confirm it in game anyway? Why would you want it to remain a topic of discussion, so to speak? Doesn't quite make sense, unless the real reason was that actually they're two different people, and he doesn't want the gender of the Vengeful Spirit to be obvious, because that would clue you in that it's Michael. But the one you should not have killed is another spirit, and so that one's gender can be confirmed. Also, I should point out that the Vengeful Spirit never actually, never says I am the one you should not have killed in any of their voice lines, or even that you shouldn't have killed me, or even that William did kill them. And so, again, just, it does seem like they're two separate people, because it feels like the one you should not have killed, with the way they're portrayed through their mouthpieces, of the animatronics in the game, doesn't quite seem to be capable. Doesn't quite seem to be. What am I saying? The vengeful, the one you should not have killed, wouldn't seem like the type of person to not say something like that if they were speaking directly to William. They don't really seem like the type of person to speak directly to William anyway. So yeah, I think Michael being the vengeful spirit makes a lot of sense. but also the one you should not have killed is then, you know, the person who I've taken to calling Michael Brooks, because Michael Brooks is given a lot of emphasis in the books. It's Charlie's friend, Ghost Inside a Golden Freddy. Like, that feels, a lot of the names in those books were correct. And so for the sake of argument, I'm going to refer to that character as Michael Brooks until we get a more solid name. You could also refer to them as Evan if you really want to take that solution of the Foxy grid, but I'm going to refer to them as Michael Brooks for the sake of convenience. Also, then you have Michael, and that's just kind of funny. Michael, Mike, Schmidt, Afton, and Michael Brooks. And then you would have... Okay, what? Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. And then you can have things like, you know, all the references to Fredbear and A Lake of Blood, and like the twitching is probably a Springlock failure. That's right, but I think it's likely that the one you should not have killed was springlocked. Right? There's a lot of evidence of that, and then it's just the evidence in the books and the film. Where like, yeah, there are 5. So yeah, the 5th missing kid is the most vengeful. Like, Golden Freddy drags William away. Golden Freddy soul is looking at Willie, like as William as he springlocks in the movie. At Matthew Lillard as he you know, in the books, also you have Andrew, who's implied to be inside of Golden Freddy in another one of the books. The new kid, I believe it is. And then the Stitch Wraith parallels, so which actually do line up because It's Me is probably Crying Child speaking, so it's almost certainly Crying Child speaking, actually. So, you know, the It's Me would be... you know, I think that way, like, here you can consolidate the evidence, but, like, there's evidence Michael, and there's evidence of the one you should not have killed, and Michael wasn't really killed, and you kind of have to kind of stretch it, and, like, you know, I feel really good on the Michael is the vengeful spirit, and the one you should not have killed is then Michael Brooks. Or as Michael Afton is the vengeful spirit. And then Michael Brooks is the one you should not have killed. And then Charlie's also probably here because the puppet and Lefty's lines don't really line up with either of them. Maybe even Crying Child's here because when you use the death coin on, you know, Golden Freddy, Fredbear jump scares you. The only person to ever actually possess Fredbear was Crying Child because by the time the one you should not have killed, Michael Brooks, was killed or springlocked inside that suit, it was already Golden Freddy, right? So it probably wasn't... It wouldn't... The only person who would ever have possessed a fully Fredbear was, well, Crying Child. So maybe his soul is even hanging around here. But at the very least, I feel good in saying, like, there are probably definitely 4, possibly 5 souls here. And there's Old Man Consequences, who could be... Here's the thing, either could be Henry, which I like. I also like the idea that Michael is, you know, just from someone on the Game Theory subreddit in either one of their recent meme times, I think it was, where like Mike consequences, my consequences, a young man's mistakes make an old man's consequences. Like, I think that works really well. And if Michael is here anyway as the vengeful spirit, but the vengeful spirit implies they won't let William rest, so it is more likely to be Henry. But you know, now you may be wondering, well, what do I think of the Cassidy with Springlock? I agree that it's Cassidy, but clearly I disagree on their reasoning for Cassidy. But okay, kind of regardless of the path you take, we come to the same conclusion, right? Crying Child is Cassidy. I don't think Cassidy was Springlocked. I don't think it makes sense. First off, let's just break this down first. The Springlock suit in the sister location bunker is almost certainly not Golden Freddy. If you look at the faceplates, like, trust me, as someone who really, really wanted this to be Funtime Bonnie, like, come on, it would make so much sense. The Funtimes clearly represent his family in a way. You're telling me William wouldn't make a Springlock suit of Bonnie? Like, come on, it should be Funtime Bonnie, but it isn't because you just cannot make the argument that that looks like Bonnie's face shape at all. It doesn't fit a muzzle. It doesn't fit Golden Freddy because his face kind of divides into 2, where, like, the bottom of, like, he has a jaw. This mask does not have a jaw, it's a mask, a lot closer to the Funtimes or even the Ennard mask, right? And so, it feels like it, as a Springlock suit, would have to, and it's not, like, there are only 4 characters in the franchise who that face shape lines up with. The Minorinos, Puppet, Baby, Ballora. We know it's not Baby because Baby's face plays, we're seeing the whole face. Like, in the Into the Pit trailer, which they compare it to, like, I'll show a picture probably, you only see the top half of Golden Freddy. Here you see the full face mask, which I think would even further cement the idea that the shape wouldn't line up, that it's not Golden Freddy. Plus the coloration doesn't line up, and like the face plates on the Fun Times open completely differently. This has closer to Funtime face plates. Plus we only ever see the original's face plates open in VR, and we notably never see it with a very original animatronic like Spring Bonnie. Are you telling me like I guess we do see William try and pull off the head. So maybe they can't. Oh no, he's pulling off the jaw. He's pulling up and down the jaw on the Springlock suit that is Spring Bonnie. In the secret stills in FNAF 3 with Springtrap, so no. Actually, probably not. Ballora's right in front of us, so we know it's not Ballora. Baby's face plates don't open like that. They open 6 ways, and again, we're seeing the whole face, so it's not Baby. It just isn't. So really, that leaves Minorina or Puppet. Either is likely, but since this is a Minorina themed mini game, and you get a Minorina jump scare when the Springlocks fail, I feel like this being Springlock Minorina just makes I feel like it makes the most sense, because then Minorina is also a fun time, and if it came from Baby's old location, that would make sense. So that's where I stand on it. We also know that just like there weren't only 2 Springlock suits, because we know Freddy Fazbear had 2 Springlock suits at the same time as Fredbear's, right? Because Phone Guy directly, like in the FNAF 3 phone calls, he's talking about 2 Springlock suits, and he notably says, like, you're the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. So Freddy Fazbear's had Springlock suits, and we know Fredbear's Family Diner was probably open around the same time. Plus, notably, Phone Guy in FNAF 2 does not recognize, like he says, a yellow one in the back, which implies that he doesn't recognize either Golden Freddy or Spring Bonnie, possibly even both. And if he doesn't recognize them, it would further cement the idea that, like, yeah, the Springlock suits like Freddy's were different Springlock suits. So there's actually 4 in play. So it wouldn't even, like, even if you say they wouldn't have built one for Baby's Pizza World, which I think is honestly just telling us that like, Elizabeth's death was a lot earlier because there was a Springlock suit there. So it was before the Springlocks were out of fashion. So it's telling us around, like, when Elizabeth died, it was much earlier, right? Possibly before Crying Child's death. But because the place got closed in one day, it was never actually used. And so, as a Springlock suit, right, the way it was meant to be used. Baby seems to be aware of this kind of thing anyway. So, I don't think it's Golden Freddy. Although, ironic, which is unfortunate, because otherwise, like, the twitching Golden Freddy could just be Michael. Because I believe Michael would, like, he was in there for 18 hours, knocked out, limp, but presumably breathing and heart beating, right? So he should be possessing that suit, because there's just no way he wasn't springlocked. And we know Remnant has healing properties, so maybe that's how he got out of it unscathed and didn't realize he was dead. Maybe there was some kind of weird ghostly placebo. I don't know, but, like, all I know is that there's no way he was not springlocked unless he was put in that suit much earlier. Because the Springlocks then, fail very easily when he's actively awake, trying not to set them off. So, also the Springlocks appear to be different, because he's actually able to wind up the Springlocks without a Springlock crank, which furthers my idea that he possesses the suit, and would then even explain how he can do Ultimate Custom Night. Because if his body's destroyed, you'd think his soul would just move on, but maybe if he's tied to Earth almost like a Horcrux by that suit, and the FNAF 6 location, if it is built, on Fredbear's, which, like, Security Breach does seem to be pointing towards that idea, then his soul would be able to linger around. It wouldn't be difficult for him to, grab William and, with the help of another soul, put him in Ultimate Custom Night. But, yeah, if it was Golden Freddy, that'd be nice, and honestly would probably allow us to remove a lot of that evidence. But no, I just don't think it can be Golden Freddy. I just don't think it lines up enough. And then their final piece of evidence is, that Scott said this.
So here's an interesting one, which I don't know if you're going to answer or not. So in Night 4, when we're inside the suit, a lot of people wanted to know whose suit is that.
Whose suit is that? I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to answer that for you.
That's fine.
That's going to have to remain a topic of discussion.
In his video, in his interview with Dorco, as just heard, he said, it needs to remain a topic of discussion. Allow me to show you another clip, because I think it'll explain my point better than I can.
So, in A Tale of Two Stands, was that baby Shirley Pines? I cannot talk about the baby. Baby's off limits. Next question.
The context to that is that the baby is some timeline ruining thing. I'll try and put a video on screen. Someone did a really good video on it, but it's been a while since I watched it, so no promises. But I'll try to get it up on screen. But basically, this baby ruins the entire timeline, and as you see there, Alex Hirsch turned it into a bit of a joke because clearly he didn't intend for that to happen, and he doesn't have an explanation. To me, Scott's that has to remain a topic of discussion for now. Is I don't think he went into it with a plan of who that was. He just wanted a cool Springlock scene, and he didn't say, "Oh, it's super important to the lore," or "Oh, I have an idea, but it's I want you to work it out," or he didn't say anything like that. He just said that needs to remain a topic of discussion for now, which kind of reads to me as a lot more of a I cannot talk about the baby style, excuse where he doesn't quite he doesn't have his reasoning, and so I think that just makes a lot. I think that works a lot. That makes a lot more sense, right? That it's not some big secret. He didn't have an idea in mind for who it would be, and I think it makes sense to be Springlock Minarina or Rena, but do I think that was Scott's intention at the time? Probably not. As for, you can probably guess where this is going. I don't think Cassidy was Springlocked. I agree, heavily with their part that, Balloon Boy was a law. Michael was put in Nightmare Experiment. Michael is Vengeful Spirit. Cassidy being Crying Child, I disagree with their reasoning, but we get to the same conclusion that Cassidy is the name of the Crying Child. But I don't think he was part of the missing children incident, and I definitely do not think that he was Springlocked. Just for the very, look at his death scene. As you've just seen, Michael talks to him, then William talks to him through the plushie, or who we have basically, almost concrete. Basically concrete evidence that this is William. I have a slightly different theory, but it's... for all intents and purposes, this is William. Definitely of the I will put you back together line, anyway. So, William is talking to Crying Child here, through the plushie, implying he's definitely not in the room, and Michael just talked to him, and notably knows the put you back together line, thanks to Fredbear, and when he's talking about Elizabeth, so maybe he was told to put Elizabeth back together, maybe he heard the put back together line from the plushie. Either way, he just spoke, and then the plushie spoke to Crying Child, so what I'm hearing is that Michael Like, Michael was probably in, or at least near the room. William almost certainly was not in the room, and then Crying Child flatlines, right? I don't think that's him being removed from the, that's not him being taken off the machine and the machine thinking he's dead and flatlining. Because Michael, like, again, Michael's probably in the room, William is almost definitely not. Like, there's just no one to take him off the machine. So he would flatline then and there. Oh, yes, there's Michael, but, like, Michael isn't going to take him off the machine. Michael ain't doing that. Like, so he probably just flatlined then and there. Like, I think least assumptions, least logical leaps, Crying Child just died there, right? That's his death. Even, like, the plushies fading away, right? Into the darkness and him, like... to me, that just makes a lot more sense if Michael's in the room. That, yeah, Crying Child just flatlines. And that's what's... So unless you mean to tell me this dead body was spring-locked, which doesn't really feel like anything worth reminding William about, because that wouldn't really be a mistake and would just kind of feel unnecessary, and, or, like, I don't think William would spring lock a dead body. And obviously I have some of my own theories, but I'm not going to bring them in as counter evidence, because that would just require going through them, and I've done that before. Like, I have my own slight explanations and things, but in the end, I just don't think it, like, I just don't think it can work, because Cassidy flatlines right there. And, like, yeah, you can explain it away as his perception of time is wonky or something, but, like, that wouldn't explain why they're all right next to each other. That wouldn't, like, that wouldn't have that effect. And again, like, just the visual, like, he's in this dark realm, he's flatlining, his plushies are literally fading away, could represent his consciousness fading away. Like, he's just